poor girl gave her sandwich to a millionaire disguised as a homeless man. 3 days later, a man in a suit knocked on her door. Comment below with your first name and where you're watching from, then relax and enjoy the story. In a worn-down apartment building in Riverside, where paint peeled like autumn leaves and the elevator worked only when it wanted to, 7-year-old Sophia Thompson sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor. Her small fingers carefully colored another picture to add to the collection that brightened their otherwise modest home. Outside, the evening light cast long shadows through the single window, illuminating dancing dust particles in the air. "Sophia, dinner's ready," called her mother Olivia from their tiny kitchen. Sophia looked up and smiled, her bright eyes reflecting a wisdom far beyond her years. "Coming, Mom." The apartment was small, just 2 rooms plus a bathroom, but it was clean and filled with love. Sophia's colorful drawings papered the walls, covering cracks and stains, transforming the humble space into a gallery of childish imagination and hope. Olivia Thompson, still wearing her hospital scrubs from her first shift of the day, set 2 mismatched plates on their wobbly table. Despite the exhaustion etched in the lines around her eyes, she managed a warm smile as her daughter bounced into the room. "Macaroni and cheese again?" Sophia asked, climbing onto her chair. "With extra cheese, just how you like it," Olivia answered, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. "I've got to head back for the night shift at Memorial in an hour. Mrs. Grayson from apartment 3B will come check on you before bedtime." Sophia nodded solemnly. This was their routine now, ever since Sophia's father had walked out the door when she was just a baby, never to return. Olivia worked double shifts as a nurse across 2 different hospitals, just to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. "I made you something today," Sophia said between mouthfuls of pasta. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded paper heart, decorated with glitter and small drawings. "For your locker at work. So you remember I'm thinking about you when you're taking care of sick people." Olivia's eyes glistened as she accepted the gift. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." Her voice cracked slightly. "You know what? You have the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known." "You always say that, Mom," Sophia giggled. "Because it's true." Olivia reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's small hand. "Promise me you'll never lose that kindness, no matter what life throws at you." "I promise," Sophia replied earnestly, although she couldn't fully understand the weight behind her mother's words. Later, as Sophia prepared for bed, Olivia knelt beside her and tucked the worn but clean blankets around her small frame. "Tomorrow's going to be a special day," Olivia said mysteriously. "Why? Is it a holiday?" Sophia asked, eyes wide with curiosity. "No, nothing like that." Olivia smiled. "Just a feeling I have. Sometimes the most ordinary days turn out to be the ones that change everything." Little did either of them know just how prophetic those words would prove to be. For the very next morning, a chance encounter on Sophia's walk to school would set in motion events that would transform their lives forever. The October morning arrived with a biting chill that painted the tips of Sophia's ears pink as she trotted down the apartment building's steps. Her breath formed small clouds that dissipated into the crisp air. In her small backpack were her school supplies and a carefully wrapped sandwich, peanut butter cut diagonally, just as she liked it. Her mother had prepared it before collapsing into bed after her night shift. "Bye, Mrs. Grayson," Sophia called out to their elderly neighbor who had stayed overnight. "Thank you for the braids." The old woman waved from the doorway, her arthritic fingers curled like winter branches. "Stay warm, child, and mind the crossing lights." Sophia skipped along the familiar route to Riverside Elementary, humming a tune she'd learned in music class. The city was just waking up. Store owners unlocking their shops, office workers clutching travel mugs of coffee, all moving with that peculiar Monday morning heaviness. At the bus stop near Maple Street, something unusual caught her eye. A man sat on the ground, his back against the bench rather than sitting on it. His clothes were tattered and layered against the cold, his gray beard unkempt. But what struck Sophia most were his eyes. a startling vivid blue that seemed to hold both great sadness and surprising alertness. Sophia slowed her pace, clutching the straps of her backpack tighter. Her mother had warned her about talking to strangers, especially in the city. But there was something about this man that didn't seem threatening, just tired and sad. As she approached, the man glanced up, then quickly looked away, as if embarrassed to be seen. Sophia noticed how he tucked his hands, red from the cold, deeper into his worn coat pockets. "Good morning," she said softly, stopping a few feet away. The man seemed surprised at being addressed. "Morning," he replied, his voice gravelly but gentle. Sophia shifted from one foot to another, feeling a sudden certainty in her heart. "Are you hungry, sir?" The question hung in the air between them. The man's piercing blue eyes studied her face, not with suspicion but with something like wonder. Yes," he finally admitted, his weathered face softening. Without hesitation, Sophia unzipped her backpack and pulled out her sandwich. "Here," she offered, extending it toward him. "It's peanut butter. My mom made it. She's a nurse and she says protein helps you stay stronger in cold weather." The man didn't reach for it immediately. "That's your lunch, isn't it?" Sophia nodded but continued holding out the sandwich. "It's okay. We get hot lunch at school on Mondays. Spaghetti day." She smiled reassuringly. "My teacher, Mrs. Abernathy, says we should always share when we can." Slowly, the man reached out with calloused hands and accepted her offering. "Thank you," he said, his voice cracking slightly. To Sophia's surprise, she saw his eyes grow shiny with tears. "You're welcome. I hope you have a nice day," she replied cheerfully, already turning to continue her journey to school, completely unaware that the man watching her leave was Edward Reynolds, whose net worth exceeded $11 billion. Edward unwrapped the simple sandwich with careful movements as if holding something precious. As Sophia's small figure disappeared around the corner, he whispered to himself, "When was the last time someone looked at me without wanting something in return?" Sophia arrived at Riverside Elementary just as the first bell rang. Her classmates rushed around the playground, squeezing in final moments of play before lining up. Mrs. Abernathy, a plump woman with salt and pepper hair pulled into a neat bun, stood by the entrance with her clipboard. "Good morning, Sophia," Mrs. Abernathy smiled warmly. "Ready for our history project today?" Sophia nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, ma'am. I finished my drawing of the Liberty Bell last night." As the children filed into the classroom, Sophia's stomach growled softly. She'd forgotten that Monday's hot lunch was actually tomorrow, not today. Still, she didn't regret giving away her sandwich. The man's eyes had held such gratitude, it was worth a little hunger. Meanwhile, across town, Edward Reynolds sat motionless on the bus stop bench, the empty sandwich wrapper carefully folded in his pocket. For 3 weeks now, he'd been conducting his social experiment, leaving behind his penthouse, designer clothes, and security team to experience life as the invisible people did. What started as research for his foundation had become something more profound. He'd seen people avert their eyes, drop coins without making contact, even cross the street to avoid him. Then this child, this remarkable child, had approached him with dignity and kindness, seeing him as a person worthy of conversation. Edward pulled out his burner phone and dialed. "James, it's me. I need you to do some research." He described Sophia and the route she'd taken. "Find out everything about her and her family, and James, make it priority." Back at school, Sophia sat through her morning classes, her mind occasionally wandering to the blue-eyed man. During lunch period, her friend Lily noticed her empty hands. "Where's your lunch, Sophia?" Sophia shrugged. "I gave it away." "Gave it away? To who?" "There was a man who looked hungry." Lily wrinkled her nose. "You mean a homeless person? My dad says we shouldn't encourage them." Sophia felt a flicker of discomfort at her friend's tone. "He's still a person, Lily. My mom says everyone deserves kindness." Before Lily could respond, Mrs. Abernathy approached their table. "Sophia, sweetie, are you without lunch today?" Sophia nodded reluctantly. "Come with me," Mrs. Abernathy said gently. leading her to the teacher's lounge where she unwrapped half a turkey sandwich from her own lunch bag. "Here you go." "I can't take your lunch, Mrs. Abernathy." The teacher smiled. "You're not taking it. I'm sharing it, just like you shared yours this morning." Sophia looked up, surprised. "How did you know?" "Lily mentioned it." "That was very generous of you," Mrs. Abernathy said, her eyes twinkling behind her glasses. "You know, Sophia, small acts of kindness can sometimes have the biggest impact. You never know how you might change someone's day or even their life." Sophia took a bite of the sandwich, not realizing just how prophetic her teacher's words would prove to be. Nor did she know that at that very moment, James Harrington, personal attorney to one of the wealthiest men in America, was discreetly gathering information about a 7-year-old girl and her hardworking mother from Riverside. The wheels were already in motion, set on their course by a simple sandwich and a pure heart. The next morning proceeded as usual for Sophia. She woke at 6:30 to the gentle chime of her mother's old alarm clock. Olivia had returned from her night shift just an hour earlier and was sleeping soundly, her nurse's uniform draped carefully over the chair for tomorrow's shift. Sophia tiptoed through their apartment with practiced quiet, preparing her own breakfast, a bowl of slightly stale cereal, with just enough milk. She packed her lunch with careful deliberation, an apple, a juice box saved from last week's school lunch, and the last slice of bread spread thinly with peanut butter. There wasn't much left in the kitchen until Olivia's next paycheck on Friday. "Arimi." The bus stop. Sophia glanced around hopefully, but the blue-eyed man was nowhere to be seen. She felt a small pang of disappointment, though she couldn't have explained why. She continued to school, her thoughts shifting to the spelling test scheduled for today. Across town in the luxurious penthouse atop the Reynolds Tower, Edward sat in his private office surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Gone were the tattered clothes and unkempt beard, replaced with an immaculately tailored suit. Yet his eyes, those piercing blue eyes, remained the same, now, fixed on the file his attorney had placed before him. "Her name is Sophia Thompson, age 7, James explained. "Lives with her mother, Olivia Thompson, 32, a registered nurse who works at both City General and Memorial Hospital. The father left when Sophia was an infant." "Financial situation?" Edward asked, his voice quiet but commanding. James hesitated. "Precarious at best. The mother works double shifts just to cover rent on a 2-room apartment in Riverside Heights. The building barely passes code inspections." Edward stood, walking to the window. From 52 stories up, the city looked like a miniature set, the people mere specks moving along predefined paths. Somewhere down there was a little girl who had seen him, truly seen him, when he was disguised as just another speck. "The sandwich," he murmured. "Sir?" James raised an eyebrow. "It was her only lunch, wasn't it?" James nodded solemnly. "Based on the financial records, I'd say that's very likely." Edward turned, his face set with determination. "I want to help them, James, but not in the usual way. This needs to be different." "May I ask why, sir?" James inquired carefully. In 15 years as Edward's attorney, he'd rarely seen his employer so affected by anything. Edward's gaze softened. "Because that child gave without expectation. Because she saw value in me when I was disguised as having none." He paused, memories of his own childhood poverty surfacing briefly. "And because sometimes, James, the universe puts someone in your path for a reason." Meanwhile, Sophia spent her afternoon in the public library, as she did most days after school. She sat at a small table near the children's section, methodically completing her homework while waiting for her mother to finish her day shift. The librarian Ms. Chen kept a kind eye on her, one of many unspoken arrangements that helped the Thompson family manage their complicated schedule. "Working hard?" Ms. Chen asked, placing a small cup of hot chocolate beside Sophia's worksheets. Sophia looked up with a grateful smile. "Yes, ma'am. We're learning about fractions." Neither Sophia nor her mother had mentioned the incident with the sandwich to each other. To Sophia, sharing with someone in need wasn't remarkable enough to report. It was simply what her mother had taught her to do. And Olivia, exhausted from her endless shifts, had no way of knowing that her daughter's small act of kindness was about to bring unexpected change to their carefully balanced lives. Wednesday evening found Olivia at the small stove in their kitchenette stirring a pot of tomato soup. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, evidence of another double shift split between hospitals. Sophia sat at their wobbly table, carefully coloring the solar system for her science homework. "How many moons does Jupiter have, Mom?" Sophia asked, pencil poised above her paper. Olivia smiled tiredly. "A lot, sweetheart. At least 67 last I checked." 67. Sophia's eyes widened with wonder. That's like having 67 nightlights all at once. Olivia laughed softly at her daughter's imagination when a firm knock at the door interrupted their moment. Both Thompson women froze. They rarely received visitors, especially on weeknights. "Are we expecting anyone?" Sophia whispered. Olivia shook her head, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Stay there," she instructed, moving cautiously toward the door. Through the peephole she saw a tall man in an expensive-looking suit, his posture straight and formal. He didn't look like a bill collector. They usually came in pairs and wore cheaper suits. He didn't have the harried look of a door-to-door salesman either. "Who is it?" she called through the door, one hand reaching for her phone. "James Harrington." "Ma'am," came the polite reply. "Attorney for Edward Reynolds. I'd like to speak with you and your daughter Sophia, if I may." Olivia's hand froze midway to her phone. Edward Reynolds? The name sounded vaguely familiar. Someone important, she thought. But what could his attorney possibly want with them? With cautious movements, she unlocked the door but kept the chain fastened, opening it just enough to confirm the visitor matched what she'd seen through the peephole. "How do you know my daughter's name?" she demanded, maternal protectiveness hardening her voice. The man, James, offered a respectful nod. "I understand your concern, Ms. Thompson. My client has had a rather remarkable encounter with Sophia. I assure you this visit is of a positive nature." He produced a business card and slipped it through the gap in the door. Olivia examined the card. Embossed lettering, heavyweight paper, contact information for Harrington and Associates Legal, counsel to Reynolds Enterprises. It looked legitimate, but caution kept her wary. "What kind of encounter? Perhaps it would be best if I explained everything properly. I promise you have nothing to fear." Something in his tone, professional yet genuinely reassuring, prompted Olivia to make a decision. She closed the door to remove the chain, then opened it fully, standing protectively in the doorway. "You have 5 minutes," she stated firmly. James nodded, stepping into the modest apartment with the graceful respect of someone entering a sacred space rather than a cramped dwelling. His eyes fell on Sophia, who had abandoned her coloring and was half hidden behind the kitchen counter watching with wide eyes. "Hello, Sophia," he said gently, maintaining a respectful distance. "I believe you shared your sandwich with someone recently? A man with blue eyes, sitting at a bus stop?" Sophia's expression shifted from apprehension to surprise. "The hungry man, is he okay?" James smiled, a genuine warmth softening his professional demeanor. "He's very well, thanks to your kindness. In fact," he knelt to her eye level, "that man is my employer, Mr. Edward Reynolds, and your simple act of generosity affected him deeply." Olivia moved closer to her daughter, confused. "I don't understand. Who exactly is your employer, and why was he accepting food from my child?" James straightened, turning to Olivia. "Ms. Thompson, my client is Edward Reynolds, founder and CEO of Reynolds Enterprises." He paused, allowing the information to register. "And he has sent me here with an extraordinary offer for both you and Sophia." James Harrington stood in the center of the Thompsons' modest living room, his tall frame making the small space feel even more cramped. The simmering pot of tomato soup on the stove filled the apartment with a homey aroma that contrasted sharply with the attorney's designer suit and polished shoes. "May I?" He gestured to one of the mismatched chairs at the kitchen table. Olivia nodded, still wary. Sophia, please finish your homework in your room. But Mom, Sophia began to protest. It's actually important that Sophia hears this too, James interjected gently. My client was quite specific. Olivia hesitated, then relented with a protective hand on her daughter's shoulder. All right, but speak plainly. We don't need legal jargon. James sat, placing his leather briefcase on the table. 3 days ago, Sophia encountered my client Edward Reynolds at a bus stop near Maple Street. At the time, Mr. Reynolds was not dressed as you might expect a billionaire to be. A billionaire? Olivia's eyes widened. James nodded. Mr. Reynolds occasionally conducts what he calls social research. He dresses as a homeless person to observe authentic human behavior without the influence of his wealth and status. Sophia perked up in recognition. The man with the blue eyes? He's a billionaire? Yes, Sophia. The very same, James confirmed with a gentle smile. And your act of kindness, offering him your only sandwich, profoundly affected him. Olivia's expression shifted from confusion to understanding. You gave away your lunch? She asked Sophia, who nodded sheepishly. I wasn't that hungry anyway, Sophia mumbled, though her protest was undermined by the audible growl of her stomach. James continued. Mr. Reynolds has been watching people pass him by for weeks, avoiding eye contact, crossing to the other side of the street. Then your daughter approached him not with pity or disgust, but with dignity and genuine kindness. He opened his briefcase, removing a sealed envelope. Edward Reynolds is the founder and CEO of Reynolds Enterprises, which owns everything from tech companies to hospital chains. His net worth exceeds $11 billion. Olivia's jaw dropped. Wait, the Edward Reynolds? The one who built that big tower downtown? The very same, James confirmed. And beyond his business ventures, he's known for his rather unconventional philanthropy. Sophia tugged at her mother's sleeve. What's philanthropy, Mom? It means helping others with money, sweetheart, Olivia explained automatically, her mind still processing the situation. James looked directly at Sophia. Mr. Reynolds was deeply touched by your generosity, not because of the sandwich itself, but because of the spirit in which it was given. You saw him as a person deserving of kindness when he appeared to have nothing to offer in return. He turned to Olivia, his expression serious. What my client observed in your daughter, this natural compassion, is something he believes should be nurtured and rewarded. We don't need charity, Olivia said stiffly, pride straightening her tired shoulders. Mr. Reynolds isn't offering charity, Ms. Thompson. He's offering opportunity. James slid the envelope across the table. He would like to establish a full educational trust for Sophia, covering everything from private schooling through university. Olivia's hand trembled as she reached for the envelope. Additionally, James continued, he'd like to offer you a position as head nurse coordinator at the Reynolds Medical Foundation, overseeing nursing staff and protocols across our affiliated hospitals. The salary would be approximately triple your current combined income, with regular hours and comprehensive benefits. Stunned silence filled the apartment. Even Sophia, though not fully understanding the magnitude of what was being offered, sensed the weight of the moment. Why? Olivia finally whispered. Why would he do this for strangers? James's professional demeanor softened slightly. Ms. Thompson, my client has more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. What he lacks, what many wealthy people lack, are genuine human connections. He glanced at Sophia with a gentle smile. Your daughter treated him like a person, not a problem or an opportunity. That's rarer than you might think. Olivia looked down at the envelope in her hands, unopened. This seems too good to be true. Mr. Reynolds would like to meet with you both properly, James said, standing. Tomorrow evening, if possible. He can explain his intentions more thoroughly then. As he moved toward the door, he turned back with one final comment. Mr. Reynolds has a saying, true character is revealed when no one is watching. Your daughter showed tremendous character, Ms. Thompson. My client simply wants to honor that. After James departed, Olivia and Sophia sat in stunned silence at their kitchen table, the envelope between them like some magical artifact that might disappear if touched. "Mom?" Sophia finally asked, her voice small. "Is something bad happening?" Olivia reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand. "No, sweetheart. I think something very unusual is happening. I'm just not sure what to make of it yet." The next day moved in a haze for Olivia. She went through her morning shift at City General with her mind elsewhere, double-checking medications and patient charts more carefully than usual, afraid her distraction might cause an error. The envelope from James Harrington remained unopened in her purse. She couldn't bring herself to look at it yet, as if examining its contents might somehow break a spell. Sophia, meanwhile, went to school as normal, though she'd asked countless questions that morning. Is the blue-eyed man really rich? Why does he want to help us? Do we have to move away? By evening, Olivia had finally steeled herself and opened the envelope. Inside were several documents, a proposal for Sophia's educational trust, details of the job offer, and a formal invitation to dinner at Edward Reynolds' residence. The figures made her lightheaded, more money than she'd ever imagined handling. At precisely 7 p.m., a sleek black car pulled up outside their apartment building. The driver, professionally courteous, opened doors for them and answered Sophia's excited questions about the vehicle's features during the 20-minute drive to the wealthy side of town. "Look, Mom." Sophia pressed her face against the window as they passed through ornate gates and up a winding driveway. "It's like a castle." The Reynolds estate sprawled across several acres, the main house an architectural marvel of glass and stone. Gardens stretched in every direction, illuminated by subtle landscape lighting. It was more than a home. It was a statement of wealth and power. "Remember your manners," Olivia whispered nervously, smoothing Sophia's dress. Her best, though it was slightly worn at the cuffs. They were greeted at the door not by staff as Olivia had expected, but by Edward Reynolds himself. Without the disguise of ragged clothes and an unkempt beard, he cut an impressive figure, tall and distinguished, with silver threading through his dark hair. But his blue eyes remained exactly as Sophia remembered them. "It's you," Sophia exclaimed, her eyes widening in recognition. "The sandwich man." Edward's formal demeanor cracked, a genuine smile warming his features. He knelt to Sophia's level, meeting her gaze directly. "Yes, it's me. Thank you for remembering." "You look cleaner now," Sophia observed with childlike directness, causing James Harrington, who stood nearby, to stifle a chuckle. "Sophia," Olivia whispered in gentle admonishment, but Edward laughed, a rich, heartfelt sound that seemed to surprise even him. "You're absolutely right," he agreed, standing to extend a hand to Olivia. "Ms. Thompson, thank you for coming. I know this situation is unusual." Olivia shook his hand firmly. "Mr. Reynolds, while I appreciate your interest in helping us, I have to ask directly, what do you want in return? Nobody offers something for nothing, especially in my experience." Edward's expression turned thoughtful. "A fair question. Would you mind if we discuss this over dinner? My chef has prepared something special." He led them through the mansion to a surprisingly intimate dining room, where a table was set for 3. Unlike the grand, imposing spaces they'd passed through, this room felt almost cozy, with warm lighting and comfortable chairs. "I had him make macaroni and cheese," Edward confided to Sophia as he held chairs for his guests. "James mentioned it's your favorite." As the first course was served, Edward looked directly at Olivia. "To answer your question, Ms. Thompson, what I want is quite simple, though perhaps difficult to understand." He paused. "I want to honor the kindness your daughter showed me, and by extension, the values you've instilled in her." Throughout dinner, Edward shared stories from his own childhood, growing up in poverty with a single mother who worked multiple jobs. His path to wealth had been neither easy nor expected, beginning with a software innovation he'd developed in a community college computer lab. "When my first company went public," he explained, cutting his food into neat portions, "I promised Myself, I would use my resources to help others facing similar struggles. Sophia listened wide-eyed, fascinated by this man who had been both a beggar and a king. Olivia, however, remained guarded, her analytical nurse's mind searching for hidden motivations. "Mr. Reynolds," she said during a pause in the conversation, "your offer is incredibly generous, but I have to ask, why us specifically? There are countless struggling families, countless kind children." Edward set down his fork, considering her question. "Your daughter's action struck me because it was pure. She had so little herself, yet gave freely." His blue eyes grew distant. "Do you know how rare that is? Most charity comes from surplus, giving what we can easily spare. Sophia gave when giving meant sacrifice." Olivia's expression softened slightly, but doubt still clouded her features. "And the job offer for me? Educational trust for Sophia? That seems excessive for a sandwich." "It's not about the sandwich," Edward replied. "It's about recognizing character worth investing in." He leaned forward. "Ms. Thompson, I have more money than I could spend in several lifetimes. What I lack is meaning. Your daughter reminded me what matters." James, who had been silently monitoring the conversation from a corner of the room, approached with a folder. "Perhaps the specifics would reassure Ms. Thompson." Edward nodded. The educational trust would cover Sophia's schooling through college, any college she qualifies for. The nursing coordinator position offers a salary of $175,000 annually, with reasonable hours and full benefits. Olivia's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. That was nearly quadruple her current income. "The position is legitimate," Edward continued. "The Reynolds Medical Foundation oversees healthcare initiatives across 12 hospitals. We need someone with practical nursing experience to coordinate our programs." "It sounds wonderful," Olivia admitted, "but also frightening. Our life is simple, but it's ours. I worry about what such massive changes might do to Sophia, to both of us." Edward nodded thoughtfully. "That's a wise concern. Perhaps you'd like time to consider? There's no deadline." Sophia, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up. "Mr. Reynolds, do you have a family?" The question hung in the air. Something shifted in Edward's expression. A flicker of pain quickly masked. "Sophia," Olivia admonished gently. "That's personal." "No, it's a fair question," Edward said, his voice softer now. "I was married once. We had a daughter." He paused, composing himself. "I lost them both some years ago." Understanding dawned in Olivia's eyes. "And Sophia reminds you of her?" Edward met her gaze directly. "That's partly why your concern honors you, Ms. Thompson. I'm not looking to replace my family. I'm looking to honor my daughter's memory by helping a child with the same spirit of generosity she had." As they prepared to leave, Olivia remained conflicted. The opportunity could transform their lives, but something held her back. A mixture of pride, suspicion, and fear of the unknown. On their drive home, Sophia fell asleep against her mother's shoulder, exhausted by the evening's excitement. Olivia stared out the window at the passing city lights, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The driver, sensing her mood, maintained a respectful silence. Back in their apartment, after tucking Sophia into bed, Olivia opened her laptop. The nurse in her needed facts, evidence, something concrete to make sense of Edward Reynolds' extraordinary offer. Typing his name into the search engine, she began her research. Articles about his business empire appeared first. Technology patents, real estate holdings, charitable foundations. The man's wealth was well documented, his business acumen legendary. But Olivia scrolled deeper, looking beyond the corporate success stories. A headline from 5 years ago caught her eye. "Reynolds family tragedy. Billionaire loses wife and daughter." Her heart quickened as she clicked the link. The article detailed how Edward's daughter Emily had died from a rare autoimmune disease at age 6. His wife, Caroline, had taken her own life 6 months later, leaving a note that blamed Edward for being too consumed with work to notice their daughter's early symptoms. "Oh my God," Olivia whispered. her hand covering her mouth. The pieces suddenly connected with painful clarity. Emily Reynolds would have been close to Sophia's age now. The timing, the offer, Edward's emotional reaction to Sophia's kindness, it all pointed to a man still drowning in grief, possibly looking for redemption or worse, replacement. Olivia closed her laptop, feeling sick. Was this what it was all about? Did Edward see Sophia as some kind of surrogate for his lost child? The thought made her deeply uncomfortable. The next morning she called in sick to work for the first time in years, then dropped Sophia at school with a tight hug and a promise to pick her up early. Her next stop was James Harrington's office, downtown. The receptionist initially tried to insist on an appointment, but something in Olivia's determined expression led her to call James directly. Minutes later, she was shown into his elegant corner office. "Ms. Thompson," James greeted her, looking genuinely surprised. "I didn't expect Emily Reynolds," Olivia interrupted, her voice tight. "That's what this is about, isn't it?" James's composed expression faltered momentarily. He gestured to a chair. "Please sit down." "I don't want to sit down," Olivia said, though exhaustion ultimately forced her into the offered seat. "I want the truth. Is Edward trying to replace his daughter with mine?" James sighed deeply, smoothing his tie in a habitual gesture. "It's not that simple, Ms. Thompson." "Then explain it to me," she demanded. "Because from where I'm sitting, a grieving billionaire is offering to change our lives completely, right after my daughter showed him kindness, a daughter who happens to be the same age his would have been." "You're not wrong about the facts," James acknowledged. Emily's death devastated Edward. His wife's suicide destroyed what remained of his world. He leaned forward, his professional veneer dropping slightly. "But I've known Edward for 15 years. He's not trying to replace Emily. He's trying to honor her memory by helping a child who reminds him of her spirit." Olivia shook her head, unconvinced. "How can I possibly know that's true?" "Because," James said quietly, "I've never seen him cry until your daughter gave him that sandwich." Olivia left James Harrington's office with more questions than answers, her mind still troubled. She walked several blocks before finding a quiet cafe where she could gather her thoughts. Over a cup of coffee that grew cold as she stared into its depths, Olivia wrestled with her instincts. As a nurse, she'd developed a keen sense for when patients weren't telling the whole truth. Something about Edward's story felt incomplete. Though James seemed genuinely convinced of his employer's good intentions. Her phone buzzed with a text from Edward himself. "I sense you have reservations. Would you meet me at the Children's Memorial Garden at 2 p.m.? Just you. There's something I'd like to show you." The Children's Memorial Garden was a peaceful sanctuary in the heart of the city, created for families who had lost young ones. Olivia arrived precisely at 2, spotting Edward sitting alone on a bench beside a small fountain. Gone was the powerful businessman from last night. This was a man weighted by grief, his shoulders slightly hunched. "Thank you for coming," he said as she approached, not looking up from the small photograph in his hands. He held it out to her, a smiling little girl with his same striking blue eyes. "Emily," Olivia said softly, understanding immediately. Edward nodded. "She would have been 8 next month." His voice remained steady, but pain etched every word. "She died of Batten disease. It's rare, degenerative. By the time we got the correct diagnosis, it was too late for effective treatment." Olivia's medical knowledge filled in the blanks, a devastating neurological disorder that primarily affected children. "I was in Tokyo when her symptoms worsened," Edward continued, "closing a business deal that seemed crucial at the time. My wife Carolyn called repeatedly, but I kept postponing my return." His knuckles whitened around the photo frame. "I lost both of them because I prioritized wealth over what truly mattered." "Mr. Reynolds, please," he interrupted gently. "Call me Edward." "Edward," Olivia corrected. "I understand your loss is unimaginable, but I need to know. Is Sophia a replacement for Emily in your mind?" He met her gaze directly, his eyes clear despite their sadness. "No. Sophia is Sophia, her own person with her own life ahead of her. But when she approached me at that bus stop, offering the only food she had, he paused, collecting himself. It reminded me of Emily's heart. My daughter would have done exactly the same thing. He gestured around the garden. After they died, I established the Reynolds Children's Foundation. We fund medical research, support families with sick children, provide educational opportunities. It's how I honor Emily's memory, by helping children who are still here. Olivia saw genuine pain in his expression, but also something else. Purpose. Determination. I'm not looking to be Sophia's father, Edward said firmly. I'm looking to ensure a bright future for a child who showed remarkable compassion. The kind of compassion this world desperately needs more of. For the first time since James Harrington had knocked on her door, Olivia felt the tight knot of suspicion in her chest begin to loosen. The following week passed in a blur for both Olivia and Sophia. Olivia continued her shifts at the hospitals, though her mind frequently drifted to Edward's offer and their conversation at the memorial garden. Sophia, sensing the undercurrent of change, asked fewer questions but observed her mother with curious eyes. Saturday afternoon found them in their apartment's small living room, surrounded by paper and colored pencils. Sophia was drawing elaborate pictures of what she imagined Edward's mansion looked like from the inside, adding fantastical elements like secret passages and rooms filled with butterflies. "Mom," she said, carefully selecting a blue pencil, "are we going to see Mr. Reynolds again?" Olivia looked up from the budget she was reviewing, a habit so ingrained she couldn't abandon it, even with Edward's offer hanging in the air. "Would you like to?" Sophia nodded, her pencil moving in confident strokes. He seemed sad. But nice sad, not scary sad. Olivia smiled at her daughter's perceptive description. "Nice sad. Like Ms. Chen at the library," Sophia explained. "She's sad because her husband died, but she's still nice and gives me hot chocolate sometimes." Olivia set down her calculator, moving to sit beside her daughter on the floor. "Sophia, I need to ask you something important. How would you feel if some things in our life changed? Big things like your school, or where we live?" Sophia considered the question with a seriousness that sometimes startled Olivia, her little philosopher with braids and missing front teeth. "Would we still be together?" she asked. "Always," Olivia answered immediately. "Would I still see my friends sometimes?" "We could arrange that." Sophia added yellow windows to her mansion drawing. "Would you still work all the time and be tired?" The question pierced Olivia's heart. She hadn't realized Sophia had noticed her exhaustion. "No, sweetie. I might work in a different place with better hours. I'd be home more." Sophia nodded, as if this was the deciding factor. "I think that would be good." She looked up at her mother. "Is Mr. Reynolds going to help us?" "He's offered to," Olivia admitted. "But it's a big decision. It would change a lot of things." "Because of my sandwich?" Sophia asked, her brow furrowing. In confusion, Olivia smiled. "Your sandwich was just the beginning. Mr. Reynolds saw something special in you, your kindness, your good heart. Those things are rare and valuable, Sophia." "More valuable than money?" Sophia asked innocently. "Much more valuable," Olivia confirmed, "and that's what makes this decision so hard. I want you to have opportunities, but I don't want you to lose the values that make you special." Later that evening, after Sophia was asleep, Olivia called James Harrington. "I'd like to meet with Edward again," she said. "I have. Conditions I'd like to discuss." 2 days later, Olivia sat across from Edward in his office at Reynolds Tower, the city spread out like a glittering map below them. James sat quietly to one side, legal pad ready. "I appreciate you meeting me," Olivia began, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I've been thinking about your offer, and I'm prepared to accept it, with certain conditions." Edward nodded, a hint of relief crossing his features. "I'm listening." "First, Sophia's education. I want her to attend Westbrook Academy." Olivia named a well-regarded private school known for its emphasis on community service and ethical development. "It's excellent academically, but more importantly, It focuses on character and empathy. Agreed, Edward said without hesitation. Second, the job. I'll accept the position, but I want to earn it. I'll start as a regular nurse coordinator and work my way up based on merit alone. Edward's eyebrows rose slightly. That would mean a lower initial salary. I understand that, Olivia said firmly. But it's important to me and for Sophia to see that positions are earned, not given. Very well, Edward agreed, respect evident in his tone. Anything else? Olivia took a deep breath. Yes, the most important condition will remain in our apartment for now. Seeing his surprise, she continued, I want Sophia's transition to be gradual. New school is enough change to start with. Our apartment is small, but it's home. Maybe in a year or so when she's adjusted, we can consider moving. Edward studied her thoughtfully. You're not what I expected, Olivia Thompson. Is that a problem? On the contrary, he smiled slightly. It's refreshing. Most people would have immediately asked about housing upgrades. I'm not most people, Olivia stated simply. And I want to make sure Sophia doesn't become most people either. Edward leaned back in his chair, a new respect in his eyes. I'm beginning to understand where Sophia gets her character from. Your conditions are acceptable, all of them. James will draw up the paperwork. He paused. There's one thing I'd like to ask in return. Olivia tensed slightly. Which is? Allow me to establish a scholarship program in Sophia's name at Westbrook for children from circumstances similar to hers. She would have no responsibilities. It would simply honor the spirit of generosity she demonstrated. Olivia considered this, then nodded slowly. That would be acceptable. But I want one thing understood clearly, Edward. Her voice took on a protective edge. Sophia is my daughter. Your role in her life needs to be appropriate and transparent. No secret agendas, no trying to replace what you've lost. You have my word, Edward said solemnly. In fact, I'd like to suggest we start with occasional dinners, perhaps twice a month. You'll both always be present, and we can develop a healthy dynamic at a pace that feels comfortable for everyone. As the meeting concluded and arrangements were made, Olivia felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future without constant financial anxiety. A future where Sophia could pursue her potential without limitation. Yet even as hope took root, a small voice of caution remained. Edward Reynolds had entered their lives like a character from a fairy tale, offering solutions to problems they'd lived with for so long they'd become normal. Could such dramatic change come without hidden costs? The next month brought changes that unfolded, with surprising smoothness. Sophia started at Westbrook Academy mid-semester, initially nervous about being the new girl, but her natural warmth and genuineness quickly won her friends. Her teacher, Mrs. Blackwell, recognized Sophia's innate empathy and encouraged it, assigning her as a buddy to another new student who was struggling to adjust. Olivia began her position at the Reynolds Medical Foundation, working directly under the chief nursing officer. True to her word, she started in a role commensurate with her experience rather than taking an elevated position. Her colleagues, initially wary of her connection to Edward Reynolds, soon recognized her competence and dedication. Their first dinner with Edward took place at a family restaurant rather than his mansion, a thoughtful choice that set Sophia at ease immediately. Though initially reserved, Olivia found herself warming to Edward as he spoke passionately about healthcare initiatives and asked insightful questions about her perspective as a frontline nurse. The foundation is planning to launch mobile clinics for underserved communities, Edward explained over dessert. I'd value your input on what equipment and staff would be most essential. Olivia, surprised at being consulted, offered practical suggestions drawn from years of experience. Most importantly, you need to establish trust. People won't seek care if they feel judged or unwelcome. Edward listened attentively, occasionally making notes on his phone. Sophia, meanwhile, had commandeered his dessert plate, carefully constructing an elaborate ice cream mountain. That's quite the architectural feat, Edward commented, watching her work. Sophia looked up proudly. Mrs. Blackwell says I have spatial intelligence. We're learning about different kinds of smart. Indeed you do, Edward agreed. Though perhaps not the cleaning up melted ice cream kind of intelligence, he added with a wink as a drip escaped onto the tablecloth. They all laughed, and something shifted subtly in the atmosphere, a tentative comfort forming around their unusual arrangement. As weeks passed, Olivia observed Edward carefully, looking for signs that he viewed Sophia as a replacement for Emily. Instead, she saw something different. He treated Sophia with genuine interest and respect, never imposing expectations or forcing connections. He asked about her school projects, remembered details she mentioned in passing, and once brought her a set of professional-grade colored pencils after noticing her passion for drawing. One evening, about 2 months after their lives had changed, Olivia found Sophia sitting on her bed looking through her treasured box of mementos. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" Olivia asked, sitting beside her. Sophia nodded, holding a slightly crumpled drawing, one she'd made of their old apartment building. "I miss Miss Chen sometimes, and Tommy from my old school." Olivia put an arm around her. "We can visit them anytime you'd like. Change doesn't mean we have to forget what came before." Sophia considered this, then pulled out another item, a faded photograph of Olivia holding her as a baby. "Mom, do you think my dad would be happy about our new life?" The question caught Olivia off guard. They rarely spoke about Sophia's father, who had left before Sophia could form any memories of him. Olivia paused, choosing her words carefully. "I think anyone who truly cared about you would be happy to see you thriving." "Is Mr. Reynolds going to be my new dad?" Sophia asked directly, her eyes serious. "No, sweetheart," Olivia answered firmly. "Edward is a friend who's helping us, but he's not trying to be your father. You understand that, right?" Sophia nodded. "That's what I thought. He doesn't act like he wants to be my dad. He acts like—" She searched for the right words. "Like a friend who really listens." Relief flooded through Olivia. Sophia, with her remarkable perceptiveness, had understood the boundaries of their new relationship better than Olivia had feared. That night, after Sophia was asleep, Olivia sat on their small balcony, gazing at the city lights. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, fairy tales could come true in their own imperfect, complicated way. What she couldn't know was that their journey had only just begun, and that the greatest challenge to their newfound stability was already taking shape. 3 months after Sophia began attending Westbrook Academy, spring arrived with a burst of color and optimism. The Thompson women had settled into their new routines with growing confidence. Olivia thrived in her role at the Reynolds Medical Foundation, where her practical experience and compassionate approach earned her the respect of colleagues and a recent promotion to senior coordinator. Sophia blossomed at Westbrook, her natural intelligence nurtured by dedicated teachers and enhanced resources. While still living in their modest apartment, they now had breathing room in their budget, enough for occasional treats and the security of a growing savings account. Their twice-monthly dinners with Edward had evolved into something they both looked forward to. Sometimes they dined at restaurants, other times at museums or cultural events that expanded Sophia's horizons. Edward remained respectful of boundaries, never overstepping into a parental role but becoming what Sophia had aptly described as a friend who really listens. One Saturday afternoon, Edward invited them to the botanical gardens where a special butterfly exhibit was on display. Sophia ran ahead on the paths, marveling at the colorful insects that occasionally landed on her outstretched hands. "She's thriving," Edward observed quietly as he and Olivia walked at a more measured pace. Olivia nodded. "The school has been wonderful for her. Her teacher says she has a gift for biology. She remembers scientific names better than kids twice her age." "That doesn't surprise me," Edward smiled. "She has a remarkable capacity for caring about details others miss." They paused at a bench watching Sophia carefully photograph a blue morpho butterfly with a child-friendly camera Edward had given her for her birthday. "I have a proposition," Edward said after a comfortable silence. One I hope you'll consider carefully. Olivia turned to him, her expression curious but guarded. What kind of proposition? The Reynolds Foundation is launching a new initiative, establishing health clinics in underserved communities nationwide. The program needs a director, someone with clinical experience, administrative skills, and most importantly, genuine compassion. Olivia's eyes widened. Are you offering me the position? Your supervisor recommended you, Edward clarified. I simply agreed with her assessment. You've more than proven yourself, Olivia. She absorbed this information, a mixture of pride and uncertainty crossing her features. What would it entail exactly? Overseeing the program development, hiring, staff establishing protocols. It would mean more responsibility, a significant salary increase. He hesitated. And some travel. Travel, Olivia repeated, her gaze drifting to Sophia, who was now carefully documenting butterfly species in a notebook. Edward followed her gaze. That's the complicated part. The position would require periodic site visits, perhaps a week, per month. I understand that's a significant consideration for a single mother. Olivia's expression grew thoughtful. It is. Sophia has never been away from me for more than a school day. There are alternatives, Edward suggested carefully. The foundation could arrange for Sophia to travel with you during school breaks. And when travel doesn't align with her schedule? He paused, measuring his words. If you were comfortable, my staff could ensure she's cared for in your absence. Olivia turned to him sharply. Edward, I appreciate everything you've done for us, but Sophia staying at your home without me, that crosses a boundary I'm not comfortable with. I understand completely, he replied without hesitation. It was merely a suggestion. Perhaps there are friends or family members who could step in. Olivia sighed. Not really. My parents are gone and I don't have siblings. Before, I arranged my shifts around Sophia's school schedule or relied on neighbors in emergencies. They fell silent, watching Sophia's joyful exploration. Finally, Olivia spoke. The position sounds perfect otherwise. I just need to figure out the logistics. Take your time deciding, Edward said. The role won't be filled until you've had a chance to consider it fully. That evening, after Sophia was asleep, Olivia sat alone with a cup of tea, weighing her options. The opportunity aligned perfectly with her skills and passion. It offered financial security and professional fulfillment she'd never imagined possible. Yet the travel component presented a real challenge. As she considered possible solutions, her phone buzzed with a text message from Edward. I had another thought about the childcare situation. What if we established a scholarship for a live-in graduate student? Someone studying education or child development who could stay with Sophia during your travel periods. You'd select the person, set the boundaries, and we'd provide housing and tuition assistance in exchange for their help. Olivia stared at the message, a slow smile spreading across her face. Once again, Edward had found a thoughtful middle ground, offering support without overstepping. It was becoming a pattern she was gradually learning to trust. As summer turned to fall and then to winter, the arrangement Olivia and Edward had crafted took shape beautifully. The position as Director of Community Health Initiatives proved perfect for Olivia's skills. Her nursing background gave her credibility with medical staff, while her years of struggling to afford health care infused her work with genuine empathy. For Sophia's care during Olivia's travel periods, they found Jessica Chen, coincidentally, the niece of their former librarian, a graduate student in child psychology who connected with Sophia immediately. The young woman moved into their spare room, receiving housing and tuition assistance in exchange for being Sophia's caregiver during Olivia's absences. Ms. Jessica knows all the best science experiments, Sophia reported enthusiastically after Olivia's first business trip. We made a volcano that actually erupted. By spring, they had moved to a larger apartment in a neighborhood closer to Sophia's school. Not the luxury high-rise Edward might have suggested, but a comfortable 3-bedroom with a small garden balcony where Sophia grew tomatoes and herbs. Edward remained a consistent presence in their lives, joining them for dinner every other week and occasionally attending Sophia's school performances. His friendship with Olivia deepened as they discovered shared values beneath their different backgrounds. He valued her straightforward approach and practical wisdom. She came to appreciate his vision and genuine desire to create meaningful change. At Westbrook Academy, the Sophia Thompson Scholarship Fund had been established, providing opportunities for economically disadvantaged students with exceptional character. The first 2 recipients had already been selected for the coming school year, and Sophia had been included in the welcome committee, a responsibility she took very seriously. "I want them to feel special, not charity cases," she explained to her mother with characteristic insight. "I remember how scary the first day was. One evening in April, approaching the 1-year anniversary of their first meeting, Edward invited Olivia and Sophia to dinner at a quiet restaurant overlooking the city park. Sophia, now 8, had grown taller and more confident, though her essential kindness remained unchanged. "I have an idea I'd like to discuss," Edward said as they finished their main course. "The Foundation's work has revealed a critical gap in children's health care: early detection of rare diseases." Olivia nodded, immediately understanding the personal connection. "Because of Emily?" "Yes," Edward acknowledged. "Early diagnosis might have given her a fighting chance. I'd like to establish a specialized pediatric screening center, focusing particularly on rare conditions that often go undiagnosed until it's too late." Sophia, who now knew Edward's story, looked up from her dessert. "For kids like your daughter?" "Exactly," Edward smiled gently. "And I'd like your mother to help develop the nursing protocols." Olivia's eyes widened. "That's an enormous undertaking." "It is," Edward agreed. "But I can think of no better way to honor Emily's memory than to prevent other families from experiencing what mine did." He hesitated, then continued. "I'd also like to name it the Emily and Sophia Center for Pediatric Diagnosis, if you both approve." Sophia froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. "You want to put my name on a building? With Emily's?" Edward's expression softened as he looked at the little girl whose act of kindness had changed so many lives. "You showed me that even after great loss, there can be new purpose. That seems worth commemorating." 5 years had passed since a hungry man with striking blue eyes and a little girl with a peanut butter sandwich crossed paths. The Emily and Sophia Center for Pediatric Diagnosis had been operating for 3 years now, already saving dozens of young lives through early detection and intervention. On this particular spring evening, a special ceremony was taking place. The Center was unveiling a new wing dedicated to family support services, providing resources, counseling, and temporary housing for families traveling long distances for their children's care. 12-year-old Sophia stood at the podium, her voice clear and confident as she addressed the gathered donors and medical professionals. Though taller now, with her mother's determined chin and thoughtful eyes, the essential Sophia remained unchanged. Compassionate, genuine, and remarkably perceptive. "When I was 7, she began, I gave away my lunch to someone who looked hungry. I didn't know he was Edward Reynolds. I didn't know he was wealthy or important. I just saw someone who needed something I could give." She paused, looking toward where Edward and her mother sat side by side in the front row. That simple moment changed so many lives, not just mine and my mom's, but hundreds of families who found help at this center. In the audience, Olivia watched her daughter with eyes bright with pride. As chief nursing officer for the Reynolds Foundation, she had helped build the center from the ground up, establishing protocols that combined medical excellence with deep compassion. The scholarship program at Westbrook Academy now supported 20 students annually, with Sophia serving as a peer mentor to many of them. "The most important lesson I've learned," Sophia continued, "is that generosity creates ripples we can't imagine. One act of kindness can multiply beyond anything we can predict." She gestured to the families seated throughout the audience, parents, whose children had received life-saving early diagnoses. "Every single person here has the power to create that kind of change." As applause filled the auditorium, Edward found himself brushing away a tear. The center bearing his daughter's name had become Emily's living legacy, while Sophia had become not a replacement but a reminder that life's greatest purpose lies in what we give, not what we acquire. After the ceremony, Edward, Olivia, and Sophia walked together through the gardens behind the center, where a small memorial fountain created a peaceful oasis. "Do you ever think about that day?" Sophia asked Edward. "The day at the bus stop?" He nodded, his blue eyes thoughtful. "Every day. It reminds me that sometimes our lowest moments can lead to our greatest blessings." Olivia smiled, taking her daughter's hand. "You know what I think about? That sandwich. Who could have imagined a simple peanut butter sandwich would change so many lives?" "It wasn't really about the sandwich though, was it?" Sophia said with the wisdom that had always been her gift. "It was about seeing someone who needed help and not looking away." As the evening light softened around them, the three stood in comfortable silence. 3 lives connected not by obligation or circumstance, but by the most powerful force of all. A single act of genuine kindness that had rippled outward, creating waves of compassion that would continue long after that fateful day at the bus stop.